Navy Matters.
Welcome back here to HMTV and the Fog of War and Humanity. I have Tom Spier here for another episode on military helmets. And this segment is going to deal mostly with British military helmets during World War II. So Tom has a helmet right in front of him right now, and I'll let Tommy identify this type of helmet.
So when go back to World War I, the British came up. The guy John Brodie developed a helmet that was known to collectors as like a Brodie helmet. It looks like this. The Americans ended up utilizing a helmet that looked like this too. This particular helmet is from, I believe it's called the model 1935. And what's unusual about this helmet, or 1936, this helmet has like springs in the chin strap. Like literally, there's like a spring. So you look at the British troops in Europe after Normandy, during Normandy, a lot of them are wearing a helmet that looks like this. Some of them are wearing a helmet that looks, this is the same type helmet, but they have camouflage covers on it. Additionally, as the helmet evolved, the chin straps evolved. So this does not have springs. This is just like an elastic. The liner is, it's not a bad liner. It has these little rubber buffers in between the liner band and the steel shell to prevent blunt force trauma. These helmets were utilized by a lot of Commonwealth countries. You look at Israel, I think Israel ended up buying surplus helmets. The Dutch manufactured the helmets, I believe, post-war. They were prolifically used throughout the world. Not, a decent helmet. In fact, the Americans used a helmet that looked virtually identical up through the early days of World War II until it was replaced with the M1 helmet, which we discussed earlier.
Now, considering that Britain controlled so much of the world, 1/4 of it, right, at its height, I mean, these helmets were all over the place, right, on every continent, every ocean and sea.
They were probably manufactured by other countries. They're guys who literally just collect these helmets. I mean, every once in a while, I get on the internet and I read about some guy who's done research on these, and it's different companies, different countries, different manufacturers. It's amazing.
Now, when you look at the British helmets, I mean, we've looked at American, German, French. How are their helmets created or constructed or changed compared to the other modern countries that fought at this time, 81 years ago?
Well, I think when we spoke earlier about World War I, and this was the standard helmet that was being, essentially, this shape was being utilized during the First World War by the Americans and the British and I guess the Commonwealth countries, right?
Sure.
The helmet post-war got a little bit better. It's like a heavier helmet. In addition, where the chin strap loops come in, the way the British did it, they had a split pin. Here that they're riveted, it's sort of stronger. And in addition, there was originally, during the First World War, the British had a sort of a rivet that fastened the liner into place, which made it hard to replace the liner. So this one, you can see it has a screw on the top with like a nut on the inside, so you can just unscrew the liner. So it just makes things easier. I think the steel's heavier. It's just a more rugged construction, and the liner can be replaced. This particular example, I'm not even sure where it's from. It might be from South Africa or New Zealand. It has the liner's a little bit unusual. This one, this is this has the screw on the top too. So
now, with the camouflage, with the net, where would that most likely been used? Would that?
I mean, you look at the pictures of the British everywhere. They sometimes in Africa, I think they would paint the helmets. In Europe, they'd have camouflage covers like that or netting.
And you look at these helmets too. Americans used these during World War I, but during the first peacetime maneuvers that General George C. Marshall used in Louisiana, the Carolinas, right? Tennessee. Americans were using this, and then we kind of adapted to our own helmet. It almost seems like that helmet is almost like, seems like open-ended.
Yeah,
it's not as protective as the American or German helmet.
The British provided, I believe, several 100,000 of their helmets to the Americans. The Americans then came up with their own helmet, which was called the Model 17. And the way to distinguish between the British World War I helmet and the American World War I helmet is the way that the chin strap loop is affixed. With a British helmet, it's a split pin. It's like a cotter pin almost.
Sure.
With the American, it's like a rivet. It looks like this. But both helmets had like a rivet on the top of the helmet.
What works out better, the American design in terms of the hardware, or the British one?
I guess it really depends. It depends if you have to, maybe if you have to replace the a chin strap, it might be better to have the split pin. You just pull it out and replace it. On the other hand, the American system was more robust. After the war, after World War I, the Americans kept the same helmet style, but they changed the lining system to an aluminum liner band with a leather liner insert with a pad on the top. It was called the M1917A1, and that helmet was that M1917A1 was utilized up through the early days of World War II.
So the British had to be doing something correct with this helmet, because they militarily, until we really get involved, and you know, they took on a big brunt of that fighting by themselves. And right, I mean, it takes us a little while to get into the war.
I think the inadequacies of the helmet were realized when the Americans became involved in World War I. Or why would they have gone to the Metropolitan Museum of Art?
Sure.
And say, well, we need a better helmet. We need something well designed, because if you look at this thing, it really, protects the top of the sort of the top of the head, whereas. Can I get up for a second?
Yeah.
Whereas you look at the M1 helmet, it's a lot. It's deeper. It provides more protection, more depth. On the other hand, the helmet, this type helmet might provide more protection if something's coming down on you.
It's amazing. I mean, you got big differences.
It's a much deeper. It's a deeper helmet. It protects more of the head.
And you have differences in terms of those Allied helmets.
Yeah.
Okay, and then you have this helmet here.
Okay, so the British realized the inadequacy of this helmet also, so they designed this helmet, which a lot of guys will refer to it as a turtle helmet. It has like a turtle shell shape. And this particular one is, I believe, designated the Mark III. Now this helmet's interesting because, let me see this one. These two helmets look very much alike. They're basically the same shape. But the early British helmet that was used at D-Day, you look at the guys landing, the British forces and the Canadians, this is what they're wearing. I'm not sure if it was this particular helmet because it has a finish that may have been applied post-war, I'm not sure. But this helmet has a rivet in this position. It's up high. And this is really the helmet that was, it was a modern helmet, and it was utilized by the guys landing at Normandy.
It seems a little deeper, right? There's a little bit more protection.
It's deeper. Yep.
You think that's the American influence?
I don't know. It's deeper, and it's also sloped.
Yeah.
So it may provide a little bit more protection in deflecting projectiles. But I always liked the helmet. I thought it was a neat helmet. It has a liner. It's very similar to the other liner, virtually identical, and it also has the screw on the top with a bolt on the bottom, so you can just pull the liner out. And it has this like elastic chin strap. These were used up, I think, through the 70s. You look at them, and they were being used in Ireland. They were being used all over. Towards the end of the war, I believe the helmet evolved a little bit. This is the same shape, but in order to get the liner out quicker, they put like a snap. So you can, it's like literally a snap. You can snap the liner and you can snap the liner right out. And this has a flat finish, which is more like the finishes you'd see at Normandy.
Now, when you look at that helmet, is it possible they changed some of it because casualties might have been a little bit higher and they wanted to adapt a little bit more? And
Well, I'm sure they changed from the model 1936 to this because it's a better helmet. It's safer. It renders more protection to the guys wearing it. But as far as the lining system goes, I think they probably just changed the lining system because it was easier. The same with the chin strap retention system. Like these, it has these like little clips, so you can just clip the chin strap right in and pull it out.
now, I don't know if there's a connection with this. They make these helmets, they change from the ones from World War I, and heck, even the ones that Americans were using that looked like British, right? During the military maneuvers, British using that. And then they're going to these helmets that are almost a hybrid between their own and American. At that point, the British were exhausted from the war. You know, almost in 1943, we overcome the British in terms of military strength, naval strength, the whole 9 yards. We surpass them. Those helmets get a little bit better. They keep the men in the field a little bit longer, right? Because they're running out of bodies. I mean, really, after Normandy, even Churchill said it, the Battle of the Bulge, that was mostly an American battle. So I guess they had to be aware of heavy casualties and losses and trying to get, because they're running out of people, right? You have more people that are coming home that have been already overseas for maybe a tour or two, and the government, I guess, had to adapt to it, right? I mean, if that makes sense, right? So, all right, so you have this helmet here.
So this is a British helmet. This particular one is from, I believe, 1942. These helmets are this helmet type. These are being reproduced as paratrooper helmets, but this particular helmet is a dispatch rider's helmet, and it looks similar to the British paratrooper helmet. So guys riding motorcycles would be wearing these helmets. If you look at the guys in D-Day and thereafter, this is what they're wearing, and the insides usually have a manufacturer stamp and a date stamp. It's not a bad helmet.
Now compared to the German airborne and American, is this very similar in terms of how it was produced?
Probably. It's probably just stamped out. The lining system is, again, this isn't for jumping. This is to ride a motorcycle. It sort of covers the ears, keeps your head a little bit warm. I'm sure guys wore it in all sorts of different circumstances.
And that was pretty protective. That was
fairly
pretty heavy duty. Do you remember where you purchased that?
No idea.
So motorcycle helmet, huh? That's pretty cool.
Yes, it's a combat helmet, but it's a dispatch rider's helmet.
Did Steve McQueen?
I think they call it a dispatch rider's helmet, Mark I, 1942.
Did he wear something like that?
I don't know.
When he was trying to jump the fence in The Great Escape, remember that? I mean, he was a nut for motorcycles and motocross.
I don't know.
Now you have this helmet here.
Yeah, these are British tanker helmets. So, both of them. These are Royal Tank Corps helmets, 1936 models. Different styles, but if you look at the Brits or Commonwealth guys, this is what they're wearing in the tanks. These little things here to prevent your nose from smashing into the wall of the tank. If you hit a bump or you get thrust forward, the helmets don't really provide any ballistic protection, but they prevent your head from getting bumped. They also had little things to, put earphones in so you could communicate, I believe. So this is like a little harness for to put over your ears with some sort of communications device.
And the British were known for their armor, especially in North Africa and Sicily and Italy itself, right? And then in France, right? And the dash across.
During the First World War, they'd they'd have like tank goggles sometimes. They'd in case like the tank got hit, there'd be metal flying around the tank, so they'd have different things in front of the eyes to try to protect them. I don't know if that was done during the Second World War.
Do you remember where you purchased that from?
I think my dad might have bought those.
Wow. Is there any one helmet that you had this massive collection that you say, man, I wish I had that helmet? You're watching like a history channel, military history, and the inventory that's known as your mind in terms of what your helmets. I don't have that one. Is there any one helmet that you wish you had?
Maybe a couple of the prototypes.
Okay.
There's some rare prototypes, but they're exorbitant, the cost, and they're very rare. And it's a funny thing. Once you have a helmet, you have it. You don't long for it anymore.
Yeah. You're looking for something else, right?
Yeah, you're looking on to the next one. A buddy of mine said, once he'd purchased and sold multiple collections, and he said, once you have a helmet or a collection, you sell it, you really don't miss it. And I've never sold a collection, so I don't understand it. And I always come back to it.
Now, you look at other people's collections, and you got to marvel like they look at yours.
Well, I've seen the best collections in the United States. And
where are those located?
One guy out in Laguna Beach. Another guy was in Plymouth, Connecticut. He had a great collection, probably 2,000.
And where do they keep all these helmets? I mean, where do they have like a barn or a shed?
The guy in Connecticut, he had them all over his house on little heads.
Wow.
He was an encyclopedia of helmets. It was amazing. And he's a guy, he mentioned a couple of thousand, I don't know, a couple of thousands, maybe 1,500 or 1,000 German helmets, but it was like encyclopedic.
Was he a military guy or was he just
a history buff and a collector? Wow. This other guy out in California, he was an older guy, really nice guy with a wonderful wife. And he lived in Laguna Beach, and he had this, it was the most fantastic collection. It was, he had collections within the collections. Like you think I have a collection within. You've been over.
Oh, your collection's great.
To compare to this guy's, it was like nothing. I was like a rank amateur. I mean, I think he may have had one of the original US M1 helmets.
If that's the case, you're coming up from the farms to the majors.
He had
you have
all
some collection.
All the prototypes. He had prototypes of prototypes. It was an amazing collection.
Now, if somebody from the Pentagon was asking you, we're making a new helmet, we're trying to look back in history, what would be the best piece of advice you would give them in terms of protecting our soldiers?
If I was asked that question 40 years ago?
Or even today? Just because you're looking back in history and you've seen these helmets evolve.
I think the helmets that they're using today, I think they're pretty darn good.
Yeah.
Because they have different helmets for different troops and different capacities. You look at the guys in the special warfare community; they're utilizing different helmets than the Army Rangers. I think.
Yeah. I'm
not terribly familiar with this stuff. I mean, I don't look at it, but you look at the Navy SEALs. They have their I'm not even sure what they call them, but they're sort of like high cut helmets, so they can hear. They have like side rails so they can put like lights on them or night vision goggles or whatever, communications devices. So the helmets are evolving, but it's not like during World War II, Korea, or Vietnam where you had an M1 helmet and that's what everybody had, whether you're a Marine Recon or the Army Special Green Berets or whatever. Now they seem to really tailor helmets to specific uses.
They put a lot of time.
And they're getting lighter and they're also getting stronger.
Yeah.
Like the Kevlar that you have, and those things are obsolete at this point.
Yeah, it was obsolete when I had it. It was when I was wearing it. It was already not good enough, but because the times dictated that the government was only willing to spend so much money, and then when 9/11 occurred, we weren't ready for any of that.
Yeah.
And then Iraq and Afghanistan, they certainly weren't ready for that. And then they saw some of the casualties and the fighting and the type of fighting. And then the technology changes. I mean, look at what we're seeing in Ukraine. What the Ukrainians just did over the last week. Everything changes, and they have to sometimes quickly adapt to it. But, I mean, if some of those helmets could talk, it's pretty amazing, some of the stories of...
I think the biggest change in U.S. helmet development is when we looked at the M1 helmet from World War II, that in the lining system, that's changed because now they have Velcro back pads to dissipate the blunt force trauma to the helmet shell.
Yeah.
I think that's a huge change, and also that things are lighter, and they also render more protection against projectiles.
It's amazing what the helmets are going to look like, or how they're going to feel, or how much lighter they might be within the next major war. The problem with that is war is never going to go away. You know, it's one of those things where the government always has to look at advancing that technology for the, you know.
Yeah, you look at this shape. This shape is basically the same shape as the Kevlar, right?
Yeah.
And the same shape as a lot of the U.S. military helmets used today. This shape was essentially copied during the First World War by the Americans in a prototype called the Model 5. And in the 1970s, they came up with a helmet of this shape, basically, made out of, I believe, nylon. And the military didn't want to adopt it because it looked too much like a German helmet. So they ended up adopting the helmet in the early 80s, and people really weren't outraged. I mean, I'm sure it saved a lot of lives.
Sure.
But it's a good shape. You can hear, you can see, and it covers a lot of the head.
Are there any countries that still have a lot of these German World War II helmets? Because I can't imagine
I know that a lot of countries have relined them, like the Finnish.
Yeah.
The Finns had a bunch of them. They put their own liners in them, I think. I got a helmet out of Afghanistan that came out of German stocks probably during the 20s. It was like a World War I helmet, but it was relined by the Afghans. It has a different liner and it has penetrations for the Afghan national badge from 40 years ago or 30 years ago.
So now we're almost finished here.
Oh, we got the other helmets.
We had
a couple more.
On the ground here?
Yeah,
right?
a couple of the paratrooper helmets. Okay. So you ever see that movie, A Bridge Too Far?
Yes, yep.
So you look at the British airborne troops. This is what they're wearing, a helmet that looks like this. This is as you can see, it sort of looks similar in shape to the dispatch rider's helmet, but it has a different chin strap system, and this really keeps your head secured to the helmet. This particular helmet, I believe, is a Mark II helmet. It has the helmet shell. It has like one bolt in the back. What's unusual about this is it has a leather chin strap system,
okay,
which is indicative of, I believe, a Mark I paratrooper helmet. The helmet looks right to me. I got this in Europe, and it looks right, but ordinarily you'd expect a canvas chin strap system to be affixed to this helmet. But this is a great helmet, one of my favorites. The guys at Normandy, this is what the helmets look like. So the next one is the next one. Let's see. This is a Mark II helmet also. This has the camouflage cover pattern on it, and this has like a canvas chin strap system. It's really the same. It's the same helmet as the other one, but it has a different fabrication of the chin strap system. And it's a nice helmet. And the last one is.
Now, when you look at all the hardware and the parts, do the British do a good job with
they did a good job
keeping these things together? And
Yep. This is a neat helmet. This came out of Denmark, and this is it was identified. I think I got this on eBay. It was identified as a Danish dispatch rider's helmet. But interestingly, this helmet was originally.
So that's a motorcycle?
It is. It was used by the Danes as a motorcycle helmet, but this helmet was originally a British Mark I paratrooper helmet. And the reason I know it is because it has these two bolts in the back It has the British paratrooper liner that's dated 1942.
Wow.
It's just unusual that. And the other thing that's unusual about it has like a 1936 British spring-loaded chin strap system. So it's just a really cool helmet. If you like these things, it's pretty cool. But I like this one. I just think it had a lot of life in it. It's seen a lot, and it's gone through a lot of different changes.
Now, the helmets that you have, which helmet to you you find like the most interesting? The airborne, the motorcycle, the infantry, the armor?
I like all of them.
You like all of them, huh?
Different times, different moods, I guess.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
I have a couple of Marine Corps World War II helmets, and I think the camouflage patterns are interesting.
And they're probably most likely used in the Pacific, those ones there, right? So.
It's interesting. The guys who raised the flags, they ultimately figured out who they were based upon the patterns
of their helmets.
Because the patterns, they cut the camouflage covers out of bolts of material, and so the helmets are going to have different patterns in different locations. No two are going to be alike, and that's how they figured it out.
Wow. It's amazing because you couldn't see their faces. They thought it was a bad shot.
Yeah, they had some with the faces and the camo covers. They knew who they were, and then they started looking hard at the covers, and they figured out, who really was who.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So we have Tom Spier. Tom, thank you very much
it was a pleasure. Thanks.
Coming down to HMTV. We're going to have Tom back again. And I mean, he's got an amazing collection. Just to be able to pick his brain with these helmets is just these are good episodes. These are very good episodes to see. And we look forward to having him here again.
Yeah, if you guys ever want somebody who knows like a lot about a specific type helmet, I can try to find somebody. I'm a survey collector.
Yeah.
I collect baseball, like every baseball card.
Sure.
I mean, there's some guys who are really good at very specific things.
Yeah, but you certainly have a good base in terms of this information, which not many people know much about, which is, it's amazing. So he's got helmets, World War I, Cold War, Gulf War stuff that we will certainly be looking at down the road.